One of my favorite parts of the evening, as I like to say, is introducing the feature. Now, Martin Joseph, whom I think I met you through this space, right? Isn't that true? Even though I might have met you through him years ago, but I didn't meet you then. But you met each other, and that's why. So,
It's all your
a couple of things about this man you're about to see. These curtains behind me were brought here by this young individual here. This handy-dandy amplifier brought by this young gentleman. And didn't you do the microphone? And the microphone. So this person has a habit of doing nice things for people or stepping in, stepping up. There was a friend of ours, which I will not remain nameless, and I found out that this individual over here brings a 50-pound bag of rice to their door because he knew that they were probably in dire need of something like that. Those are just two of the small stories that I know about this person. There are others, but I won't go into that. Because we're going to talk about his poetry, actually. A man who cares enough to do things like that. And I didn't find about him directly. He didn't tell me. I found about through other people. See what I'm saying? But the poetry has a great sense of humor. When he does humor, it's humorous. He studies humor. He teaches humor. He's a teaching person over there. A professor, if you will. Not in the professional, but you do get in front of college-age individuals and you instruct them in the nature and reality of comedy and the various aspects. And there's other things besides that, I know. Cutting that short. Great poetry, great insights, good heart, a capacity to understand what's going on in the world, talk about it in such a way as to make us understand it better, or at least appreciate the humor that exists if you look at it a certain way, and that's a healing aspect of his work. Martin Joseph, would you kindly come up here and give him a round of applause, please, as he does so. We'll make sure he's framed correctly for everything he does. Martin Joseph,
Be lordly, wonderful, and amazing. He doesn't like me calling him lordly, though. He has issues with princely, even,
Good evening, Sacred Grounds.
Good evening, Martin Joseph.
I had a feature in November 22nd and had some poems lined up for that, but that kind of got blown away by a lifelong friend who I made the feature all about instead. And this is Alan Acacia, who has been here, who is featured here, and who I knew for 53 years. He succumbed to lung cancer on Christmas night, and this I like this photograph because it gives you an idea of who this guy is. This is a guy dressed as a fool who on April Fool's Day went out and blew bubbles at passing cars on University Avenue in Berkeley.
Well done.
So this is the guy that we're talking about. And I read 4 poems about him that I had written over the course of decades. And at that time I had not written this one, which I read at his memorial, which was on April Fool's Day and Easter combined. So I'm going to start with this one, just to move it along, if you would. It's called One Pack of Dues at a Time. You stupid bastard! You put a shotgun to your chest and pulled the trigger. Sure, it took the shotgun 50 years to go off, but it went off nonetheless. The American Tobacco Company needed those 50 years so they could collect all those dues from you. One pack of dues at a time, collected over the ages in exchange for bringing you a slight partial relief from the nervousness, the anxiety for which they themselves were partly responsible. Yeah, I know the key word there is partly. I know that there was the rest of the world and all its crap, and that innate chemical imbalance with which you were born. I always admired you for your struggle against that. When you were nearly dead, I asked you whether any of this was a surprise to you. Nah, you shrugged. Not at all. I asked you how it all got started. I came from a family of smokers, you said, as if predetermination were just one more straw than you could struggle against. 50 years of slight anesthetic to trade off against the 12 more years that you could have struggled here in this plane of existence. You stupid bastard. You stupid fucking bastard. I loved you. I loved you in the greenness of our youth when you asked me to drive you to Northern California because you just had to kiss Margaret O'Malley's lips once again. I discovered that California is more than the paved over desert that is Los Angeles. I discovered that Margaret had a friend. And as the four of us parked overlooking the lights of Santa Rosa, steaming up the windows, we made the Buick special. I loved you in the days of the Flash Complex in Pasadena when our party of poet warriors returned from a successful visit to Mexico and you rolled us a joint using an 8.5 by 11 sheet of notebook paper. I loved you when you discovered the Love and Spoonful and in full mania you came over to recite the lyrics word for word while drumming crazy ham-bone rhythms on your thigh. I loved you when I offered to take you with me to the Monterey Pop Festival. Oh no, you said, you couldn't. You had instead to rid your place of the giant cockroaches that in your DDT dreams threatened to eat you while you slept. You said that one asked the other, shall we eat him here or take him home? We better eat him here, said the other. If we take him home, the big guys will get him. I loved you in the days of Tortilla Flat in San Francisco, when you were still across the country yet introduced me to your ex-girlfriend who had come out here. She became the mother of my only child, who is the key to future generations who I am ever so sure will save the world from driving over the cliff of its own ignorance. I loved you when you led the line of giant dancing condoms that handed a means of prophylaxis to the mayor in a parade in San Francisco, as if the mayor would ever use prophylaxis on anything, including his thoughts. I loved you on every April Fool's Day when you dressed up in a rainbow wig and blew bubbles at passing cars on Telegraph Avenue and University Avenue in Berkeley. I loved you wearing a fool's cap in the Sierra snows in the middle of winter, gathering of fools on the very spot where the Donner Party ate its own dead to survive. I loved you when you went into electric shock therapy in decades-long quest to get your brain right. It turned out to be a matter of chemistry, and after all the rest of us had given up on you, you got it right and returned the full Allen to us in the final decade of your life. I loved that even with your battle with chemistry still raging, you rose above it all to go out and help others with their problems, helping with the neighborhood association, helping with the English as a second language class, and after you'd come down with it yourself, helping the Northern California Ataxia Support Group. But I loved you most of all for remaining a poet warrior for all these years, even when you felt that every person on earth, with the possible exception of Marie, had abandoned you. You moaned about our indifference like Jesus on the cross. You stupid bastard. You stupid fucking bastard. I loved you. From now until forever, I will shed no tear for you. And this one I wrote this morning. It's called, I Forgot to Press the Red Button. I forgot to press the red button. How could that have happened? Was it a momentary distraction, some question that someone needed to ask because it was that precious time in between in which individual human communication could flow? Oh, look, a squirrel. It is only natural. We think that we have our expectations managed, and yet, in the enthusiasm of the chase, the snap is greater than expected. In that moment, the leash handle flies from my hand, and the dog scampers after her hopeless task unabated. It's just a red button. A stupid red button. It's not going to push itself. This is why airline pilots run carefully through their pre-flight checks, because at 30,000 feet, you don't want to discover that you forgot the extension cord. On the surface of the moon, you don't want to discover that you forgot the can opener for the oxygen. But there's more to it than that. There is the inherent duality of being it and seeing yourself be it at the same time. The ohm of the moment and the amplification, the resonance of that moment echoed through time. Yes, we can, but do we? Sometimes I forget to press the red button. Sometimes the transcendence of the moment is lost. There is no such thing as take two on the first time. Life is a one-camera shoot. Wrote this one during the campaign more than a year ago. It's called The Left-Hand Side of the Great Bell Curve. To build a fire in weather too cold and wet to describe, to nurture it from spark with clumsy frozen hands until the spindly fibers of flame can grow for themselves. This is the impossibility of time, and yet it is what we do, because time has had all of time in which to do it, to make us. With such a miracle, it is easy to forget that the left-hand side of the bell curve is there at all. Technology springs to life with images and clanging sounds showing us everyone who plays at the casino wins big, wins beyond their dreams, wins beyond knowing what to do with it all. And yet, it is there, the left-hand side of the bell curve. The Greyhound bus one-way ticket to Palookaville. That is the far more likely outcome when there are no clocks and there is no sense of proportion. Crooked Donald repeats the mantra of Crooked Hillary over and over and over, following the recipe. If it worked for Hitler, if it worked for Goebbels, why would it not work here as well? We have the very same left-hand side of the bell curve. We want Krishna, we really do, but Shiva has unlimited corporate funding. She shoots caribou from a helicopter with a high-caliber rifle and then walks the red carpet in high heels to her G5 jet. Such is the mindless binge that unwinds eons of karmic development. For every miracle of fire on the frozen tundra, there are piles and piles of winter's bones, enough to make us want to understand something about the left-hand side of the bell curve. What would others say across the Milky Way? Is there another George Armstrong Custer currently raiding the Virgo supercluster? And who is there to see ya in the great Laniakea that looks down on the Milky Way like a grain of sand? While we cannot regulate our dose, perhaps we should not get too close to the great attractor. It seems that all the gravities of 100 million galaxies are affected by its pull from the empty void. Still, perhaps it would be best not to broadcast the rest of the Republican convention into outer space. A little discretion, please, before some distant predator sees how easily we are manipulated. Or perhaps it is not the distant ones that we should fear. Perhaps our greater enemies are near. I think they are already here. They are the ones who have the nerve, who have the means and the prefab schemes to move the strong emotions, to send missiles across the oceans. They ride the top and they think they deserve to manipulate both sides of the great bell curve.
Wow, all right.
This one's called Hitler, Mussolini, and Donald Trump. It was actually written during the campaign before all of that nonsense happened. My friend Larry insists that Donald Trump is the new Hitler. My friend Mo says that Larry is crazy and that Donald Trump is the new Mussolini. My friend Curly Joe, who seems rather bald to me, insists that Donald Trump is neither. He's the new Caesar, he says, the new Nero. I think they're all wrong. I asked Larry what he's going to do about it. I'll write a poem, he said, closely examining the vein structure of a leaf. In the poem, I will strip away all the leaf meat, leaving just the veins, and then I will crush the leaf veins in my hands, and that will make people see once and for all how raw and evil Donald Trump really is. I asked Mo what he was going to do about it. I will do performance art, he said. I will invite the media to cover it. I will go out to the beach, dig a hole, and bury my head in the sand. This will symbolize the willing blindness of the media to the essential evil that is Donald Trump. It will symbolize the willing blindness of the public, of us who are too involved in our own lives to pay attention to what is happening around us. I know this Burmese monk who will lend me his orange robe for just such an occasion. He even offered me his lighter. Then Mo hesitated. Well, I would do that, he said, except that all of the sands in San Francisco's beaches are black with oil. I don't know whether it's left over from the Costco Busan tanker spill or from the Dubai Star tanker spill or for some more recent spill that they haven't even told us about. Performance art is damned inconvenient. I knew I could depend upon Curly Joe. He's a man of action. There's a special at the Big 5 sporting goods store in Daly City, he said. I can get 20% off on a semi-automatic Colt. You have to go north of 400 to go semi, but I figured, hey, it's a special occasion, and I paid more than that for my iPad. I know the same monk that Mo knows, and he probably lend me his robe too. Holy shit, I asked, are you going to shoot Donald Trump? Curly Joe looked up at the sky and thought for a full minute. Then he looked down and he sighed. No, I suppose not. I'm just not that person. I suppose it will be a bale of hay, but damn it, I have to shoot something. And then he broke down and cried. I feel badly for Curly Joe. I feel badly for Mo, and I feel badly for Larry. I feel badly about the existence of all those dark forces that would make stooges of us all. But mainly, I feel badly for the dream I once had that we were all better than this, and that the things we do here in this 5-dimensional space-time would actually make a difference. And this one is because Buford liked it. It's called, You Have the Right to Remain Silent. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to just sit by and watch it all happen while Donald Trump and an ever so long list of right-minded wingnuts drag what used to be this country back into the days of the Roman Empire. Back to the days when there was no middle class and the few at the top splendored in the riches created by their slaves. They saw no shame in that. No shame at all. You have the right to remain silent. You may, if you wish, scribble down a little poem and read it to a few friends at a local coffee house. You may even walk down Market Street with 20,000 other people and express some disapproval of the way things are. You may clear your throat like a British nobleman or cluck your tongue like a disapproving clergy. You may even cling steadfastly to the idea that any of your actions will ever have the slightest effect on the powers that be. Just so long as that you remember, it was written into the Constitution. $1, 1 vote. And then again, an extra free and discretionary $1, 1 vote. And then again, 1 extra free and discretionary $1 million, 1 vote. Because we just want to keep things simple. You don't have an extra free and discretionary $1 million, do you? Well, then why am I talking to you? You will always have the right to remain silent. I saw the day when we put 250,000 people in the Capitol Mall. Noble words rang through the speakers and we all went home, but the war kept going on. A Buddhist monk set himself on fire and the wars kept going on. Phil Oakes committed suicide and the wars kept going on. The machines of loving grace that Donald Trump believes watch over us all now have much faster processors. They can now consider 1 million action alternatives before we can get our heads around one. My friends long ago hypothesized that if somehow they could just pop off Nixon, maybe that would turn things around. Maybe that would bring our men and women home from all the wars. They did not know about the mushrooms in Michigan that cover 4 square miles with spores that are all just part of exactly the same mushroom. You pop off Nixon, you pop off Hoover, hell, you even pop off Reagan, Bush, and Trump, and Cheney and Trump, and the Koch brothers and Trump, and Steve Bannon and Trump, and Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan and Trump, and Kellyanne Conway and Sean Spicer and Bill O'Reilly and Fox News and Trump, and you still haven't made a dent. The substructure of stolen money at the top will just generate new spores, the pervasive giant mushroom that strangles our state houses, that has gerrymandered our voting districts into farce, and that knows the coding of the voting machines will teach us how to live in an autocratic society and give us all the full right to remain silent. But I am not a silent man. Instead, I will take my Indian drum and all of you out to a windy beach in San Francisco. We will take Marco harps too. We will beat the ancient rhythm and keep time with his harmonica. We will go to that place where the spirit of Steve Mackin resides. We will dance beside the waves, raise great poets from their graves. We will hear those words we crave written on shadows in Plato's cave. We will feed sacred grounds coffee to all who spend the starry night with us. It will be the night that we create art. We'll hear the poem about Dan Brady's fart. And we'll show the weakness of the clowns who would wield their power over us. And when the dawn is breaking, we will amplify the clouds. We will hold our heads unbowed. We will speak our thoughts aloud where no one is disallowed, where we think the thoughts unthinkable with a spirit that is unsinkable. Electric flashes will fill the airwaves. Our ohms will be the broadcast towers with Jimi Hendrix rhymes played through cathedral chimes. We will reach across the stratosphere and integrate all times. We will discover that we've never, ever been alone. Suddenly, we see the faces that join in our parade with ideas that never fade. We will know that we have made just another link in one long, unending chain. Yes, we have all the right to remain silent. I have the right to remain silent, but I won't. You have the right to remain silent, but I don't think you will. We all have the right to remain silent, but we never, ever will.